Okay, everyone, welcome back to another episode of The Hollywood Hang, a podcast about the highs, lows, and hell no's of this crazy industry we call Hollywood. I am Nick, one of your hosts.
I'm Tepper, the other host.
Today we have a very, very special guest. I know I always say that, but this is truly a special guest, someone that I've known for years now. River Gallo is a Salvadoran-American filmmaker, actor, writer, and intersex activist. Their feature Ponyboi premiered at the 2024 Sundance Film Festival in the U.S. dramatic competition. The film won the Grand Jury Award for Best U.S. Feature at Newfest, New York, LGBTQ plus Film Festival, and River won Best Performance at the Torino Film Festival. River wrote, produced, and starred in the film, making it the first narrative feature created by and starring an out intersex artist in cinema history. Ponyboi is based on their 2019 short film of the same name that was executive produced by Emma Thompson and Stephen Fry and premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival. In 2023, River was the subject of the critically acclaimed feature documentary Every Body, directed by Academy Award-nominated director Julie Cohen. And in the commercial space, River has directed advertising spots for Facebook. Is it my son Margiela?
Nick, my son Margiela.
The fashions got you.
Their work in the arts and on social justice issues. River was on the 2023 Out 100 list and won a GLAAD Rising Star Media Award. River was named one of the 10 LGBTQIA plus film and TV creators on the rise in 2023 by IndieWire. Ponyboi was released theatrically June 27th by Fox Entertainment Studios. River, thank you for hanging with us.
Thank you for having me. Oh my God. The embarrassment of having your bio read is like,
this happens
so,
every time.
Right. You're just like, please shroud me in pillows. Thank you so much.
I am so excited to talk about this. I don't know what I blacked out of mine and Nick's conversation, but I was like, I can't wait to learn about the making the short version of this. And Nick's in class with me, I was in that group, that cohort, and I was just like, wait, what? So I'm really excited to kind of hear the trajectory of going from that and everything in between.
Yeah, I mean, it was wild because, I mean, even thinking about when we were in that class at USC, I distinctly remember we have to be really grateful for film school. I think some people post USC have some PTSD, film school PTSD, but it's just really funny. And I think probably all art schools work this way, where you get certain feedback from teachers and you listen to some of it, you don't listen to other feedback. But I distinctly remember teachers telling me not to act in it and to just focus on writing and directing. And yeah, there's a parallel universe in which I didn't act in it and I didn't have, the feature. I remember being at that crossroads and being like, oh, am I going to take up all the spaces in all the mediums of art? Because I went to acting school before USC at NYU. So yeah, I got my MFA in acting. And so it's Ponyboi became just the conglomerate of everything that I've learned the last decade of being in school. And then the short happened.
I feel like, and also, by the way, we keep it honest on here, but we're also positive, and I don't want to shit on film school. I mean, we've had guests who shit on film school, but I feel like
I'm not going to shit on film school because I wouldn't be where I am without it.
100%. But I feel like the feedback that you got just in thinking about perhaps other people who wanted to act in their own movies, and I understand the place of advice coming from you shouldn't act in this film is because people want the filmmakers to focus on the filmmaking aspect. But I think the blind spot there is people weren't understanding why it was important that you specifically act in this specific movie.
Right, totally. And it's something that I say to filmmakers. I'm like, part of the craft of just being an artist in general is like listen to your collaborators and listen to your mentors and to the people you trust. And also don't listen to them because there are certain things that like only the person with the vision knows about the project. And it's about that like tightrope balance of when it's like this my ego telling me that I need to do something because I am a control freak, or when is this because I actually am the person that is the doula of bringing this thing to life, and like I know more about it than other people do, and it's really hard. I don't know how to know, but other than just making a decision and just going with it.
And how did you end up? I want to just like go back a little bit.
Yeah.
How? Because I was like, I didn't realize you guys were like intertwined in the. I did not go to film school, so I love hearing about people like that actually like, took a lot away from film school.
Yeah.
But how did you end up at NYU? Like, what was like the steps that you took when you were younger? Were you always like, I want to be an actor, or was it? And then did you go to writing because you were like, I need to like really learn that craft?
I always in high school I was like a musical theater girl. I was like, I'm going to be on Broadway, and I still want to, but like I've come all the way around to it. Because like before I was like that was what I wanted to do, and then I went to school and I went to NYU and I was placed into this experimental theater program, which was like a lot of it focused on developing and self-scripting your own work. And so through that, I got like the playwriting bug and just like writing my own performances. And then there was something about, I mean, I love theater. And I think now more than ever, there's something really special about theater that I think more people need to support and go to, just because it's just so happening right in front of you. And I think we're so desensitized right now with our phones and screens and stuff. But at the time, I just felt like my work was leaning more surreal and more, there was something about theater that really pissed me off about how it's very clunky and the way you could play with time and place, because it's kind of just happening as it's happening. Whereas film felt like something that I could really dig my teeth into in exploring different psychological spaces of time and space. And so gradually I just started leaning towards screenwriting and screen acting. But then when I graduated, this was like 2013. So it was still, people didn't know what like gender was then. I mean, they knew, but like it was definitely not as an expansive of a conversation as it is now. And just different managers and agents just like couldn't place. They were like, "What are you? What's going on here?" Even though they like saw like that I was talented, and so I realized very early on that in order to have any kind of life career on screen, that I was going to have to write it myself. And so I went to USC because I actually had this really crazy like medical thing happen to me, and I didn't know if I was going to be able to act again. And so I was like, okay, if I'm not going to be able to act, then I need to know how to, be behind the camera. And so I applied to USC, and then my health improved while I moved out to LA, because I was living in New Jersey, New York for like my whole life. And then by my last year at USC, it kind of was the culmination of like of bringing together everything that I had learned in acting school and in film school, and also like the culmination of a lot of different things that I had been discovering about myself and my own gender. And so it just became this perfect culmination of so many aspects of my personal life and artist life and career life. And just, it became Ponyboi.
What do you remember from your time in film school? When you think back on that time of making this movie and just the experience in general, what comes to mind? Now this is therapy for us.
Honestly, what I tell a lot of people was I feel like the first 2 years felt a lot of like I was making work to please professors. And I
Mm.
was making work and at the time, I don't know um, what the teachers and faculty at USC are like now. They were by and large like white, cis, old men. And some of them were really cool. Some of them were really jaded and pissed off that they didn't have the success that they wanted in their career. And that's just kind of like the reality of film school or any art school, is that you're going to get a mix of teachers who truly believe and are passionate about teaching and are good at it, and then some teachers that are literally bitter that they didn't have what they thought they were going to have. And so it was a lot. Like film school was a lot, particularly if you go to like USC being, quote unquote, the best film school in the country, which I have theories about that. But if you go to one of those schools on like the Hollywood Reporters list, I'm sure there's this, and I guess I could specifically speak about USC, there's this feeling of like, we all felt like, okay, this is the Harvard of film school. They say to you on the first day, like, the people next to you are going to be firing and hiring you. And I think that creates a lot of unnecessary pressure and tension as it relates to art making, as it relates to like a technical school to learn about like the industry. Perfect example, because that is exactly what it feels like to exist in the industry. Is that like, there's a reason I think that LA has this kind of stereotype of like, people being fake or people being because like, people want to save face and want to be friendly because you don't know what a relationship could lead to. You don't know if like you bumped into someone here or keep bumping into them, if it could lead to, your next job. But I think as it comes to like young people and honestly just older, just students in general, learning about like the art of filmmaking, I think that is unnecessary pressure. But at the same time, I think pressure leads to great work, can lead to great work. So it's just this weird dichotomy. I think film school, I recommend it. And I'm also like, you could just make a really good short and do it with friends and people that you love and that crap. I feel like the best thing that happened at USC was that like you were constantly on set. And I think that's the only way to really learn about filmmaking is just being on set.
I think that is kind of the thing that I tell people, like, I'm like, if you think that you need the structure and the chance to do those
Right.
things, you should go to film school. If you're like, I'm from Chicago, and I feel like for
Yeah.
Chicago, I'm like, you can find those sets really, like you can, like there are people at Second City trying to make something every single day and the weekends. And I'm like, if you can ingratiate yourself with a group, like save the money. But like so many people are like, I actually feel like the structure of that will be what I need. And I'm like, kind of for you guys, like the network of people that you'll meet is like kind of unbeatable.
Yeah. Yeah. Curious, Nick, what do you think about USC and film school? Maybe you've talked about it a lot on the pod, but
No.
No.
I think the interesting thing is when I think back on film school, I also think about the pressure, and I think about how every single project that I made in film school, I thought that if that project wasn't good, then I would never have a career. Like I put so much
Right.
pressure on it, but looking back, at least for the slate of stuff that I made, none of it mattered. But ironically, your film did matter. Your film not only turned into a feature, but and I want to talk about the film, but it's like it is exactly like you translated that short film. It looks the same, it feels the same. Like it is pretty unbelievable that it's like we think about film school as practice, but like you really did make something that was quite important to your career.
Thank you. Well, it's funny because I had the same thing. I had the same feeling when I thought about like I'm about to spit out all the USC numbers because all the USC classes are in numbers. But I'll spare people from not understanding. I was just thinking about all the things that we made in all those classes and how I hated pretty much everything that I made. And I think I had this feeling that for my feature, I was like, all right, like I got to put all the cards on the table. Like I want to leave school like with something to show for myself that I could get management from, that I could get reps from, that I could just enter the industry. And so I always like, because of all those failed attempts in the first 2 years of school, like I was like, this last year, like I need to do something. And so what happened was I revisited what I was working on years ago in acting school, because Ponyboi was actually a theater piece that I had made my last year at NYU that actually was a small, like 10-minute, like performance art piece that I made my second year at NYU. So it was like, it had been alive in me in some way, shape, or form for the last, I guess the genesis of it was like 2011. Oh my God.
Oh.
And then so in 2008, it was like already something that had been, or 2017, which is when I wrote the short. It was already something that had been percolating in me. And then at that time, I decided to marry this new part of my identity, discovering that I was intersex. And I was like, that became kind of the secret ingredient to being like, okay, this became an extremely personal thing for me, but then also became something that hadn't been done before. And I think that's part of the reason that I kind of caught fire with just the industry at large, with the actors that I was able to get. And yeah, it was just kind of this perfect moment where me as an artist and as a human met the moment of something that hadn't been addressed in queer cinema before.
I think that's one of the nice things that I think when you're like starting out, you're so worried that you need to do this in like 2 years and 3 years, you're not going to make it. But all of like
Right.
the side quests end up being what prepare you exactly for the right moment in time.
Yeah.
Like if you had done it earlier, it might not have had all the pieces that you
No.
needed and what you had learned. Like, and I think that's kind of like what you grasp with age. With age is like being like, it was worth it to wait a little bit longer, because if I had been handed the keys to like a Maserati when I was 20, like I would have crashed
Right.
it. Yeah.
I would have died. And I say that too. I literally am like, if this happened any earlier, like I probably would have died, because I just didn't, my brain still wasn't formulated yet. Like I needed to learn everything that I need to learn about myself and also about the craft of like filmmaking, to be able to make Ponyboi. And yeah, it was, I don't know. I love what you said about that. You don't know, there's such a pressure that you feel when you're a young artist, and but not even young, like any artist, a beginner, I guess, who wants to make it your career, because that bridge between like, okay, I'm just making this, but I need like a side job or a side hustle, to then like, okay, I'm actually making a living from this. It's really gnarly. And no one really has the like the exact answer. I feel like everyone's journey is a little bit different, but like the only thing that I could think of is like the persistence. And that eventually, if like you keep working on the craft and keep digging deeper as an artist in terms of like what you actually give a shit about, and making things that you give a shit about, or at least like are fun and delight you in some way. I'm reading The Artist's Way right now for like the third time, and I'm reading of a chapter about like, you know, so many artists try to do what is more difficult for them as opposed to what comes naturally or easy. And it's just like that felt like film school. I was like constantly trying to like be not me. And then finally I was like, what if I was just myself? And then that's what happened with Ponyboi. It was like, it just kind of came effortlessly because it was my interest, it was my aesthetic, it was my, it was me.
What about, I'm sure you've probably already talked about this, but can you just, because our podcast is about, I mean, there's a lot of people who want to make sort of proof of concepts to turn into larger works. Can you just talk about a little bit about the path from the short film to the feature, and also the decision, or how did the decision come about to sort of just focus on you acting and writing the feature version instead of directing it?
So I had always known that I wanted to make the short a feature. And I think that's important when making a short, if that's the trajectory that you want to go on, like I feel like it's really crucial to be like, okay, we're making the short and eventually it's going to be a feature, and just to know that that's like your North Star. And I wrote a draft of the feature maybe like a year or 2 years after, a year after I made the short. There was a semblance of a draft that was crazy and very some ways very similar, in some ways very not similar to what the feature became. There was like some kind of like road trip from New Jersey to Florida in it, and like that doesn't happen in the feature. But then I officially finished it in 2020, right before the pandemic started. And at the time, I had managers through the short. I got managers through actually like our USC like showcase of our thesis. And what happened? The pandemic happened, and so nobody wanted to make a first filmmaker's like debut like queer strange feature film. And I co-directed the short film with Sade Clark and Joseph, who we went to school with at USC, and who's also one of my best friends. And I made the decision. She wanted to focus on her solo directing career, and I was thinking about co-directing with someone else, but co-directing is such an anomaly. Like it's so hard to actually like find someone to co-direct. And it was a very pragmatic and practical decision. I was just like, I've never acted in a feature before. I also understood as like a producer, like I want the thing to get made. And so it was like, it's better if someone else directs it so I could focus on my performance, because the whole movie kind of hinges on a strong performance for me. And also because I wanted to get someone who's had feature experience before. And we essentially shopped the script around to many people who passed, and eventually a small independent production company called Mountaintop Films came on board, who had investors. And they came on board because one of our producers, there's a part of Mountaintop, Trevor Wall, he had read my script when he was at Lena Waite's production company, Hillman Grad. But they passed on it. And then when he was tasked to work at this new production company, the producer asked him like, what have been some cool scripts that you've read? And Ponyboi was the one that he pitched to them. And then that was the one that they made. So it was like, yeah, you never know. And that's another lesson like about like generals and stuff. Like you don't know who's going to make your movie happen, and in what avenue it's going to come about. Because to me, I was really thinking that like of course it was going to happen through a manager submission, and they were going to submit my script, one of them was going to say yes, and it was actually not like that at all.
And then what does it look like once this production company is like, we're ready to take you on? Like, what were the next steps like for you guys?
So like there was like a shopping agreement made, and then
can you explain a shopping agreement? It's so we like to just go right into the little details.
So a shopping agreement is essentially like a contract that you go into with someone who wants to shop your script around, essentially being like, okay, for a period of time, we're going to look for essentially other producers or investors to make your film. And they usually pay you a small amount of money, like anywhere between like $500, $1,000, $2,000 to have the right to be able to do that for a year. And no one else can. Only they have the right to essentially to shop your script around. And then what happened? And then, they had investors, and they got some more investors from Fox, because they had a connection with, at the time they were called Mar Vista, this like it was a home movie production company that made like Hallmark type movies. And but through making Ponyboi and investing in it, they've now launched a new branch of Fox called Tideline that's specifically focused around like independent, like auteur-driven cinema, kind of like making a full circle with like, having Fox Searchlight and selling it to Disney, and now they have sort of Tideline, which is like their new kind of like, yeah, independent prestige-driven arm of the company. So after all of that happened, then we were, in pre-production, making multiple drafts of the script and doing the painful process of, what happens when dollars and time and people's schedules then affect the physical production, and what creative changes need to be made. And there were definitely a lot of changes made in that process. But a lot of it amazing creative ones too. Like my favorite like script edits are always like merging characters or like killing off certain characters so that other characters become more important. I think that's like such like alchemy in screenwriting, because you're like, you keep thinking like, oh, I love this character, but then it's just like, but if you don't have them, like this other relationship becomes more important, or like this other dynamic. And I that was something that I thought was so cool in that process. And then we went into production. I mean, then like, casting, which is its own. Oh my God, casting is really funny as an actor, because I guess at like the feature level and like I guess getting to the first rung of like independent level before like studio level or like mini studio level, where you realize like, oh my God, like the way casting works often is like a list of the actors you love and then going to the most famous one first, and then just literally going down the list, and as an art and also getting taped at the same time. So as an actor, it's kind of like really disillusioning to be like, wow, this is actually it. Like casting is, but it makes sense too, because it's like, in order for people to see the script, it's people look towards people with name recognition who will then in turn mean people will buy a ticket. And at a time where, distribution and theatrical releases are like dismal, like, it all really matters, particularly for like independent cinema. So, yeah, it was amazing. It was amazing. It was literally like, seeing like the sausage get made, and you're like, oh shit, like this is everything that goes into it. And some of it is unsavory, but then at the end of the day, you have a movie, and then you're like, oh, every movie goes through this, no matter what level, which is really kind of cool to know that, like, it's like we're all in good company by being in the worst company. because it's all just, this is how everyone, there's never enough time, there's never enough money, like, but somehow like it does get made.
The cast is so good.
Crazy.
But also the interesting thing was, like, as I watched all these characters pop back up that I was familiar with from the short, I was having flashbacks of I could see every actor that played that character in the short, and like I don't know, you found the perfect cast, like that in like the movie not only looks the same, but even it's the same types of actors, like all these people just embodied those characters perfectly. But did you ever have a moment where you were like, oh shit, I have to act like opposite Dylan O'Brien? Like, was that?
No, never.
You were just like, okay, I'm doing it.
Well, it's actually so funny. And Dylan, who's become like a close friend of mine, now we like laugh about it, but like, because he says like this happens often to him, but like I had no idea who he was. Like I literally had like no idea who he was. I mean, I knew about Teen Wolf, I knew about Mason, and I was like, oh yeah, I know those like titles or those like things. And I like could be like, okay, yeah, I recognize that that's the person from those things. But like I wasn't like in no way was like a diehard fan, or like had even seen any of his work before meeting him and then being like, okay, let me look at his work. And in some ways, and it was the same with Victoria as well. Like I hadn't seen you. or The Haunting of Hill House, which is incredible. Like, what the fuck? I was like watching it with a date, and I was like, wait, this is the girl that's gonna be in my movie? Like, this is crazy. And I had seen Murray's work, but Murray and I had also known each other from.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he actually had seen he saw Ponyboi at Tribeca,
Oh my
the
God.
short, and he had come up to me afterwards and was like, "Hey, like I love the movie," and I had no recollection of this. But we were actually talking back and forth for a little bit after Tribeca because he wanted to potentially cast me in the short that he was making.
Oh,
And it
whoa.
didn't work out with their schedules. But yeah, that was 2019. And so flash forward to 2022 when we were officially in pre-production, our director, Esteban Arango, he suggested potentially Murray for the Bruce character, for the cowboy, because of his work in White Lotus. And I was like, oh my God, like I know Murray. And so like I messaged him, and he was actually on the set of shooting The Last of Us when I had messaged him, which at the time, I don't know, I just think that's really cool that he was, because he has told me how like that was such a beautiful, one of the most beautiful experiences he had shooting something, and how there was so much love and connection on set, and that my email just found him at that moment where he was just like in this kind of like, you know, kumbaya, like beautiful, like filmmaking experience, and created like arguably one of the most best episodes of TV like ever.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I feel great that I actually didn't feel that nervous to act around. I think I definitely felt a little nervous to act with India because Pose was like really meaningful to me, and I loved her in it. And I think I was a little nervous to act with Murray as well. But everyone just kind of felt like a friend, like everyone. And I think that was really, it was the best that I could have asked for being my first feature, because I didn't feel like I was acting around like people that I wasn't able to connect with. It was just like, okay, these are just actors. I'm an actor. I've been an actor for a very long time. Like we're just going and doing the acting thing. And then it wasn't until after that I was like, oh man, like that, I guess that was a big deal in terms of like surrounding myself with those actors for my first feature.
Oh my God. Yeah. And also like every performance was so visceral. When Dylan O'Brien is rapping, I was like, I might have to turn this off. Like I am so uncomfortable for him and embarrassed, but like he's just so committed to it. And just like I don't know why this was like the smartest thing that I've ever seen, but when you push the carts in front of the door,
right,
I was like, this is genius. It's like the simplest, most effective way to lock this person in there, and I've never seen it done.
right.
And it was
I had no idea who, I think it was our director. That wasn't written in the script. I was like, how is that going to happen? I think originally, I forget what was originally on the page of like how that scuffle ends up happening. But I think, yeah, our Esteban, he had the idea of like getting these carts and pushing him. I was like,
I feel like that doesn't happen until like you're there with like a location to be like, oh, like these things like exist now, and like this is what you can use in like the space, which is so fun from moving from the page to that.
Yeah. It's kind of amazing what happens when, moving from the page, like those negotiations and like that sort of things get exciting.
The number one review on Letterboxd was, I'm sure you've seen it, trigger warning, white boy rapping. There's actually, I wanted to get your reaction. I wrote down some of these other, I'm obsessed with just reading Letterboxd reviews. So there's some really good ones here. Again, I don't know if you've seen these. This is one that Honora walked so that Ponyboi could run. The Godfather for the gays. And I want to ride Dylan O'Brien's Pony Boy.
I want to say two things. The rapping, Dylan actually made himself. He wrote the rap.
Wow.
In my script, I wrote like, as a placeholder, I was like, bad rapping goes here. And I was like, eventually I'll write it. But then Dylan was like, can I write it? And I was like, yes, please. And I thought actually it was a little bit too good. Like, I was like, I think like maybe, but then I think we helped it out by like editing it so like he's a little bit offbeat. So like that kind of like maybe helped. But it's funny because, and I get that sometimes the Honora comment. Sean Baker went to see Ponyboi at when there was a screening in Los Feliz and DM'd me about it. And I was like, congrats, like, you know, I loved it. And it was this weird moment because it was just like all those letterbox comments made sense. And it's funny because I do see this like relation between like Honora and Ponyboi, particularly around the fact that like, you know, one is in like Brooklyn, Coney Island, and the other one, like, it's almost like they're like parallel storylines that are happening like across the island of Manhattan. And yeah, the same night.
They could be on the same like queer cinema or like sex worker cinema, like
canon.
Syllabus.
Yeah. And for like, once this like you have this like explosive moment, have you been able to like appreciate it, or I'm someone who like panics in like that type of thing. Have you been able to be like, oh, this is amazing?
Oh, you guys, I have been through, because of the nature of what your podcast is about, I want to be like really real, but like it has been like the biggest highs and biggest lows of my life, because I think there's something, going back to the conversation of going to film school, it's like climbing Mount Everest to get your feature to Sundance. And then there's all the expectations of what you think is going to happen or what doesn't happen. And I'm fucking crazy. And like, I'm like a perfectionist. And, you know, I think, you know, when like, you know, the movie wasn't bought by A24 and like all like, you know, the things that you like think are the only reasons that your movie matters, if it reaches like this level, it's like, it becomes this like really bizarre stab to your heart, while at the same time you're like, you literally released your film at one of the best festivals in the world, and it's also getting a theatrical distribution. Like, come on. But that's I think part of the sort of like validation psychosis that we experience as like filmmakers, particularly in 2025, that have like social media followings. That it's just like, you know, comparing yourself to your contemporaries, comparing yourself to like full professionals that have been doing this for like years, and thinking that like, just thinking like, you know, it can never be sparkly enough. Like, it can never be, and until like I have an Oscar nomination. But even then, I'm sure there's people that get, you know, that I think I don't know if I was reading about it or someone told me that like, you know, some people's like lowest depressions are like the day after the Oscar, like, you know, after winning. It's just because it's just like, well, now what? Like, you did it. Yeah. And so I think the last year and a half since Ponyboi came out, there was like a lot of, deep reflection upon like what kind of career is sustainable and what kind of mindset I need to have in order to make this sustainable. Because I can't be under the delusion that I was under for my next film about what success means. Particularly because I also hear that like sophomore films are even harder than your debut film, because you're like, you have all that pressure of either success or whatever, and you're trying to match that, and you're trying to, and it feels like every film that you make, it's like you want it to be a little bigger than the last one, or you want to challenge yourself in some way so people can trust you with more money, so that you can make bigger movies, so you can make more money. And so how to balance like the career move of what your sophomore feature is, while also being true to what the fuck as an artist and as a storyteller you want to tell, because that's what you want to tell next. And I'm of the believer that like there's a sweet spot where there's a Venn diagram where both can match at the same time, you know?
Yes.
Have you noticed at all? Because I just wanted to touch on your work as an intersex activist, and I know you did the documentary series. Because I can't remember in class if you had sort of spoken to the class about this, or like we had spoken about it, but have you noticed just more discourse about it in the time from making the short until now? Like, how do you feel about? Do you think there's still more to be done in terms of just like discussing this and the discourse, or have you noticed any change at all?
It's so weird because there's some parts of the movie that as I wrote them in 2021, 2022, that I was like, people don't know, they don't have enough of a reference for anything intersex or don't know about what intersex is, that like there's certain exposition that I need to put in this movie in order for people to understand things. And it's funny that, you know, you make a movie at minimum like 2-3 years before anyone actually sees it. And so you're creating something and don't know where it's going to land in the culture. And it's just like a guess. Like you hope that what you're saying is going to like resonate and it won't be out of touch. Or and I think that Ponyboi does that. But there are certain moments where I'm like, where people have called out in me, or like because I read everything because I'm crazy. That like, oh, that like, there's like one particular line that I'm just like, I don't think I really needed to put that in the movie. But at the time, I think it was necessary. And I think people like were like, oh, like, felt like it might have been cliche or certain things. And I was just like, it's hard. I think the conversation of gender actually advanced more than I anticipated, which was amazing. But I also think that now the movie coming out lands at a moment where like, you know, my Asia was like really real with me a few weeks ago. She was like, there are less trans roles being written right now. Like there just are. Like, because people are sort of falling in line with what's happening in the country. And it's just like, if 2019 was like this, like, and it's so funny because a lot of queer artists or like influencers, creators, content creators all talk about how like there used to be so much work generated for Pride. Like Pride campaigns were a thing. Like people got paid like real money, like during the month, like the months leading up to June. And in the last few years, there's like, it doesn't exist anymore. Like people will put up like a post and that will be a thing, where they used to do like full on campaigns. And it's just really interesting to be like, the conversation has, that Ponyboi landed at a time where the conversation of gender has evolved to the degree that now it's like devolving. And it's, yeah, it's kind of unfortunate, but also like, you know, it's just like the pendulum swing and it'll swing back eventually, hopefully. But it's one of those things that as an artist, I guess, to answer your question, like Ponyboi still has been a movie that has, I think, been people's first look at like the interior life of an intersex person in fiction, and also people, to my delight, I guess, have it's not so unfamiliar to people anymore. And at the same time, it's coming at a time in the industry where there is, yeah, this kind of like rollback of diversity.
I think something. Oh wait,
no, you go. You go.
I was gonna say, I actually, the pharmacy conversation to me really felt like what a guy that I knew in high school in the Midwest would be having like at this very moment still. Like I was like, that man does not has some semblance of understanding, but really no understanding. And at the
Right.
beginning of the film, when Dylan O'Brien's character actually had much more understanding than I was
Right.
anticipating too. And I was like, I really liked the nuance of both of those people being in the line of work that they were in and the relationship to your character that they were in. That it
Right.
kind of was a spectrum of where you find different people in the world at right now.
Mm.
That I thought was like really beautifully done without like with becoming like a way to tell people about it without like there wasn't like no judgment in any like character. There was, I was judging, but it was done so well that it was that I just was very like impacted by both of those scenes and those characters and those moments.
Thank you.
I had kind of just it's going to sound like a silly question, but I'm genuinely curious. Have you seen or are you familiar with Conclave?
Yes. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god.
So,
that was my favorite movie last year.
It was one of mine too, and it's interesting because I wanted to ask you, like, I know that some people have critiqued the ending as to like, oh, it's just trying to be shock value, and like, but it seemed like a big deal that this like mainstream Oscar film, like I had a conversation with my parents about it. Yeah, like and a lot of like people's grandparents saw it. Like it really. Do you think that was sort of like they almost slipped it into this big mainstream prestige movie, and it like what did you think when you first saw that?
Oh, that was my favorite movie last year, and it wasn't related to like actually the intersex representation spoiler of it all, but like, I mean, if you haven't seen it by now, like, what are you doing? But it was because that to me was like filmmaking. I was like, yes, like dynamic shifts in between characters, like talking about multiple political things without actually in like this very contained way, like just this, like the sheer amount of like tension and the talk about like sex and sexuality with people fully clothed, like, you know what I mean? It was just like the way everything was done was just so masterful, and like the performances obviously, but like it was just so like it was filmmaking and screenwriting craft firing on all cylinders, and that's why I love the movie so much. And I saw it on a plane, and I was literally like, because I was like, there are certain movies that are like, those are good plane movies, like a lot of like biopics, like I'm like, those are movies I want to see on a plane because I don't want to pay for them, but you know, I do want to see because, you know, I want to support. But like the movie like that was like, I wanted to see that like in theaters, but I didn't have a chance. But even on a plane, it was still phenomenal. And I was like, but the thing that troubled me about Conclave was the fact that I didn't think that it was shock value. I thought it was a beautiful part of the story, the ending. What was frustrating to me about it was the fact that like it became something, the intersex representation or intersex storyline became something that couldn't be talked about in the press because of a spoiler warning. So here we have one of the biggest acclaimed prestige movies of the year at the Academy Awards that couldn't even discuss the fact that it was about an intersex person. And to my knowledge, there weren't any intersex. The writer wasn't intersex. I don't know if they had intersex consultants. To my knowledge, there weren't any intersex consultants on it. And I have friends who, if there were, would be one, or myself would have been one, or like, you know what I mean? So I'm like, I don't know if there were any. But to me, I'm like, it seems like it didn't need any. Like it was fine, except for the fact that this was an opportunity in which we could have championed the community or had a dialogue about it, a public discourse about it. But because of the nature of how it was written, we couldn't. And because there weren't any intersex creators involved in it, there wasn't. So it just felt like that was sad. That was sad. But I don't know if it could have been any other way other than hiring intersex people to have been part of it in some way. And it was just kind of, the nature of like how that twist in the movie works, that like you just literally couldn't talk about it.
And
Which some argue that it creates, I guess, the whole kind of reinforces this narrative of intersex people being like the secretive thing, this like this other, this like yeah, like used for drama, but not, but like actual intersex artists couldn't be a part of that conversation. So yeah, complicated.
Very.
Yeah.
And like talking about that, is that like, and talking about kind of like the scare of the next career move, the project that you work on, what is something that you're like excited about in the future that to try to take hold of, or like what's the next mountain you have to climb?
So I'm writing my next feature right now that I intend to write, act, and direct in, because I'm like, there's been so many people that have done that this year, particularly Ava Victor with Sorry Baby, and
so good.
James, so good, and James Sweeney with Twinless. And they've both become like friends and contemporaries. And so it's just been like this thing of like, you know, if they can do it, like, baby, step right up.
Yeah.
And so I'm just, I guess the mountain that I'm trying to climb, first of all, writing the feature, writing the thing. And it's going to be like a dark comedy, tragic comedy kind of vibe. But thinking, I guess, now knowing what it takes to make a movie, not letting, at this point as a screenwriter, not letting that hinder like the story, and thinking about the practicalities of how it would be easier to be made. Like, oh, like maybe not this location but it's just like at this point, it's like you really need to like tell the story and then reel it back during pre-production, during, you know, when the budget is made, and like see. But like now I'm like, what I'm really focusing on is just, yeah, being true to just the kind of movie that I think would be fun for myself to watch, because I'm like, why don't you just make, and it's something that I talk about with Ponyboi too, like the fact that for me it felt important for me to do just as a human that had spent a long time trying to like figure out what this part of my identity meant to me, and maybe other people that had similar experiences, what that means to them. To, you know, for me, the meaning of the movie is like, it's okay to be uncertain and be in the process of becoming. And I thought that was a meaningful thing for me to have to like do. And so for this next movie, I'm really thinking about like, what would be like, can my own movie be my favorite movie? And like, can you just make the movie that you'd want to see, and that would, you know, be entertaining and make you cry and make you laugh and be all those things and shock you? And so that's kind of what I've taken. I've said this in interviews before, like, I really love the approach that a lot of like musicians take when creating music, that they say that like the movie is, that the music is for themselves, that they wrote this album for themselves. And I think I don't really hear that often in filmmakers. Like, it's always like, I'm making it for the community, and like, which is beautiful. But I'm like I did that with Ponyboi, and now I'm like, okay, that was what it felt like. But I think honestly, the more self-serving the art can become, it can become more specific, and then can become more universal. I think that's what I'm going to experiment with this time around.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. People should check out Ponyboi.
Yes.
It is on VOD now. That is where I watched it. And we like to ask people one final question on each episode. It doesn't have to be a huge thing, but you can pick one of these three: a high, a low, or a hell no that comes to mind from just your experience working in this industry.
About anything?
Anything.
Yeah, anytime.
Ooh. I'm going to say something maybe a little little chaotic, and it's a hell no. It's between a hell no and a low. I also want to say hi because I don't want to end on like a chaotic hell no. One, be very careful about working with friends. Like, it is really something that I think as beginning filmmakers, it's really difficult to have discernment over. And particularly speaking to folks who are planning on short to feature pipelines, like making over promises about who's going to go with you. Like, I would say my advice would be like, you want to be as much as possible unencumbered when you're going into a feature, because that's what like a potential studio investors, they want to see. So that would be between a low and a hell no. And the high would be, just wait, like a high, like a fun thing, or just like
a moment where you were like, okay, this is, it was worth it.
Okay, I was at the SAG Awards, standing in the press line in front of Billie Eilish and behind Margot Robbie, and I was so anxious, and I needed to take a Xanax because I was that nervous, and I literally was like freaking out and couldn't speak, and then Billie Eilish smiled at me, and I was like, wow. We're just people, and we're just people in big dresses, like getting our pictures taken, and it's so okay.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. That's one of our best highs for sure.
Yes, yeah.
That was a high, and also like a spiral. This is a spiral high.
A spiral high, naturally, yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
well, thank you so much. This was really, really good.
Thank you.